Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm excited to have Dr. Nikhil Agrawal as my guest to talk about his experience with personal statement for residency application. Dr. Agrawal completed his plastic surgery training at the Baylor College of Medicine and he's pursuing hand fellowship at Massachusetts General Hospital. Welcome Dr. Agrawal to the channel.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for setting it up. It's a good thing you're doing for everybody, so I'm happy I could help out.
I would like to start by asking about the structure of the personal statements and the information that medical students should include in that document.
Yeah, so I think the personal statement is for when medical students are applying to residency, it is definitely something that people use as a conversation starter for your interviews and is something that people kind of get a glimpse into who you are kind of as a person. So the way generally people structure it, I think the most generic way of doing it is to have an introduction. Usually you try to draw people in with a personal story. A lot of times people will use a story either from their childhood growing up that brought them to the decision to become a doctor, or some specific life-altering event that happened earlier in your career, or a patient that kind of convinced you that you wanted to go in the specialty that you're applying to, is your kind of introductory paragraph. And at the end of that, you kind of give a preview of what you're going to talk about in your personal statement. So your last line or the last couple of things of your introduction, you say, this is what I'm going to talk about, is these are kind of the general structure of what I'm going to talk about. And so in that, you kind of say, you break it down into the next three paragraphs. And your next three paragraphs are each either a story or a summary of, three major life events or three things that you want to express to the admissions board. Generally, there's a paragraph about research or why you like research. Another one could be something about you growing up. Another thing could be about a patient you saw or whatnot. And then, so those are your three paragraphs. And then your conclusion, again, ties it back all together, and says that your interests, distinctly state why you're interested in what you're doing, conclude it, bring it all back together, and kind of tell your story. And then hopefully you give enough kind of life information in there that people have something that they want to talk to you about in the interview, and they get an idea of who you are.
Many students use the things on their CV with their personal statement, and they kind of mention everything they have there in the personal statement. What do you think about that, and how much of your accomplishment or strength should you include in your personal statement?
Yeah, so I think if there's something, certainly do not need to rehash your CV in your personal statement. I think that is like the wrong way to do it, because you already have your CV there, and people will look through that and your publications and whatnot. If there are major things in there that you want to focus on, so when you read a CV, you see a list of a whole bunch of stuff, and it's not clear what are the things that really define that person. And so if you have two or three things on there that you really want to highlight, that should be in your personal statement. And if there is something that happened during one of those, like you took a mission trip and that just goes on your CV, but that was like a life-changing experience for you, then you should definitely include that. Same with research. If one of the papers you wrote, maybe it was the first paper you did, maybe it was the biggest, most important paper you did, but that kind of encouraged you to want to go forward and do more research, or do more educational things, I think that should be included in your personal statement.
And what about extracurricular activities like sport, music, or anything outside medicine? Does that go in the personal statement as well?
Yeah, those are good things to include, particularly if they define you in some way. Those are generally interesting things that people like to talk about when you get to your interview. So, if you are a professional ballet dancer and did it for years before you got into medical school, or you took some time off, in between medical school and residency or whatnot. Those are the kinds of things that are interesting to put if you can fit it in. Obviously, if you played tennis in high school, but it's not like a major part of your life, then you're not going to have time to include that. There's too much to include. But if something was a huge part of your life for a long period of time growing up and you did through college and stuff like that, that is different. And that's a major part of your life. That should be included. Does that kind of make sense, the difference between those two things?
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that it has to fit. How long do you think is the optimal personal statement? How many words, how many pages?
Yeah, you try to limit it to one page. As long as it's interesting, people will read the whole thing no matter what. But you don't want to make it so long that it's, kind of gets boring after a while. So you want to just hit highlights.
And if you need to express your interest in specific type of programs or kind of what you're looking for in residency, and the other question that is kind of related, should you do an individualized personal statement for different programs? Because different programs have different cultures, different personalities.
I think it is a very difficult thing to do, to tailor personal statements to programs. I think there are certainly programs that highlight parts of themselves, like I know about plastic surgery. There's like 3 or 4 programs that have like an extra year of research, and that's like a big deal for them. But for most places, you as a student will not have a great idea of how to tailor your personal statement to individual programs, just to be honest, because there's so many decision makers in those rooms. And some places the chair is the big decision maker, some places the program director, sometimes it's just the most senior person. Sometimes there's some people that are talkative and not talkative when you get into those kind of meetings where you're ranking people. So I would not necessarily do that. I think you're going to have a good personal statement that you can write, and you should write that personal statement and send it to everybody. People are not going to like if you have a good research resume, and you're going to a place that's very clinically heavy, they're not going to dislike you for having a lot of research on your personal statement kind of thing. If you say in there, I want to be like a hardcore basic science person, and you're applying to somewhere that doesn't have basic science at all, maybe they'll try to say that's not a good match for you. But to be honest, it's probably not a good match for you. And you want to end up in a program that's going to support whatever it is that you want to do with your life. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a tough thing. Obviously, you want to increase your chances everywhere, but you also want to have a chance of being at the program that you want to be at. There's another issue, which is if you're coming internationally, I think it's a little different. But if you're from the States and you want to be in a certain region of the country, especially because you have family and stuff like that, I think then it can make sense to all the programs in the Northeast, you have some minor thing in your personal statement that says that you're from the Northeast or something like that. And there are other ways to do that too, with your full application. But that could be a potential way to increase your chances at those places.
So you mentioned that different evaluators in the program have different views on your application. Generally, from your experience, what do you think programs look for when they read a personal statement? What do they look for in that document? And what are the things that kind of they see or evaluate as negative to be mentioned in the personal statement?
Yeah, so I think this is a pretty key question, actually. This is very important. So the personal statement rarely is going to help you stand out so much that they're definitely going to take you, okay? So the personal statement is not necessarily the place in your application where you're going to stand out. Lots of personal statements kind of sound similar, but there are things people are looking for you not to do. So it is definitely a place where people can read your personal statement and kind of not look favorably on it. It's more of a chance to, I think, hurt yourself than it is to really express yourself. I think, so you don't want to say anything that is hugely controversial, I would say. Because like I said, you want to end up a place that kind of you'll fit in well. That said, if there's 10 faculty at a program, okay, and there's a faculty member who's very expressive in those meetings for the rank list, that person may not be representative of the program as a whole in general. So you don't want to definitely don't want to pander political statements to any program, but you just want to avoid that subject entirely. Even the fact that you bring it up would be a little bit of a red flag, I would say.
Yeah, and what are the things that they look for when they read this person's statement? What do they expect to have, or what would leave a positive impact?
Yeah, so definitely you want to say a little bit about who you are. They want to get to know you through your personal statement, and they want to know that you want to go into the specialty that you're applying to. So they want to know that you have an understanding of it, kind of like I was talking about before, and that you've looked into it and that you're interested. They want to know that you have a well-rounded personality, well-rounded application, so that you've explored things clinically. So whatever kind of experience you have in the specialty that you're applying to is good to have in there somehow. Also that you've done whatever kind of research or academic base that you have. Most programs, at least with plastic surgery, I'm sure it's the same with other specialties, they're looking for people that want to go into academics, at least when you start out. And so you want to have something about how you enjoy teaching. You like being in an academic environment where people are positive and talking to each other and looking for new solutions. If you have I think somebody's asking about volunteering. If you have good volunteering experiences that were important to you, that also helps you kind of round out your application as well. You want to tell your story. It is it's one part of the application where it's not just a list of your accomplishments and your scores. So they want you to be an interesting person, somebody that they can talk to.
Highlights from your life.
Exactly right.
Many students have these ideas, they have what they want to tell, but they struggle through writing the personal statement. Can you share your experience when you were a medical student applying to residency? How did you start writing that document? Did you do it once, or did you show it to other people? Kind of the experience of writing that document.
Yeah, so it's a tough thing for sure, and you have to be very honest. So you have to kind of expose yourself a little bit, which I think is a tough thing to do. I even just wrote one for fellowship applications just a year ago. I think the best place to start is you start with your personal statements that you've written before. So you've written one for college, most places, right? And you may have written one for med school if it's not combined. And so you go back and read those, and those will kind of at least help me remind myself what were important events in my life up to those points. And it helps you remind yourself, why did I want to be a doctor? What helped me grow up? Where did I come from? Who am I? And I think that's a good place to start. And then, when you outline stuff, you say, what are the things people are looking for? So they want me to talk about my specialty. Some people kind of want to know why you want to be a doctor in general, especially if you're going to like a medicine specialty, like internal medicine or something. So that is going to be in a lot of ways borrowed from your personal statement for medical school. And so you list 3 life events that you can use as examples. So you have an introduction, your 3 kind of life events or 3 things you want to highlight, and then your conclusion. And I think that once you start writing, it flows, and then you just write everything down, get it down, don't look at it for a couple days, come back, edit it, show it to as many people as possible, get people to read it. That'll also help you flush out like spelling and grammar issues. And then I think what happens during that process when you're showing it to people is if the people that are reading your application are going to be a very diverse group of people. So if like one person that reads your essay has an issue with something or thinks something is like grammatically incorrect, like take it seriously, don't just kind of brush them off. Because there is a good chance that somebody who's reading your application may have the same issue as that one person.
That's a great point, yeah. Because different people have different views about things, and you want to have the acceptance of as many broad audience as possible.
Absolutely, exactly.
Perfect. I see a question regarding IMGs, for example, who have some gaps or some deficiencies in their application. Should they explain why they have these problems or these weaknesses in their personal statement, or leave it up to interview when people ask about it?
I think both, depending on what it is. So every person's situation is a little different. If there are struggles that you had that you have helped you grow, and it was like a experience that was like a big thing for you, like a lot of people, medicine and whatnot, if that happens a lot, right? And so that is a good time to explain it, I think. And then you don't want to end it there. You want to say, this is what happened, I grew from it, and move on from it. And this is how I'm a better person, or this is, how my traits have shown that I can persevere and whatnot. I think that's a good thing to explain.
So you mean if there is something that was learned from this, or you gain strength from the weakness, it's good to highlight that.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Another person asked about templates for personal statements. I've seen that a lot. People ask about other people's personal statement, and you might be copying what other people have written, and you want your statement to be as personal as possible. Do you have any thoughts about looking at other people's personal statements?
It's good, like you're saying, if you can get a draft of yours before you start looking at templates of other people's, or at least have your kind of story in mind of what you're going to talk about and have something on paper. Because, like you said, it's very easy to just start, even if you don't do it consciously. Once you've read a few of them, you start kind of borrowing from people, and it's okay to borrow like the template. Um, but it is a nice thing if you can have something on paper before you start heavily looking at other people's. And then the nice thing you can do is with your kind of other medical students, you can trade. So they read yours, you read theirs. That'll help you get ideas too for things you like, things you don't like. So I think that's good.
Yeah, that's perfect, because I think if you have your template and you answer the questions that a personal statement should talk about, and you use other templates kind of to refine your personal statement, that's different than looking before, which might make you copy what other people have said before.
Right, yes.
Students asked about including life events like illness of themselves or a family member in their personal statement, and how that affected their choice of a specialty or medicine in general. Is that a good thing to mention?
I think those are great things to include. I think that especially for your introduction, like for very first paragraph, because those will draw people in and they're generally interesting things to talk about. It is good for you to write about anyway, because I think it grows you as a person. If you include it in your personal statement, you will have to be prepared to answer questions about it or talk about it in your interviews. So you have to be very comfortable with it and at peace with it. And if it's, you don't want to include touchy stuff just to include touchy stuff, but if it helps you grow and it's something you're comfortable with and you've grown from, I think it is a great thing to include for sure. Those are things that define us as people.
Exactly. And another student asked a similar question along the lines, rather than mentioning that you're hardworking or you're committed to your goal, mentioning that through sport that you've accomplished something, a medal, or you ranked first in that specific activity, to convey that you're hardworking or you're competitive. Is that
Yeah,
a strategy of doing that?
you have to do that, I would say. Just saying you're hardworking or even just saying like, oh, I'm interested in research is not going to impress anybody. I mean, you're using examples and showing people that you are. Obviously, showing is better than just telling people. I think it's extremely important to do that.
So, Agrawal, do you have any additional thoughts on this topic? Any additional advice you want to mention?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground actually. I think this was really good. Thank you for putting everything together. I think kind of in conclusion, just start writing, get your thoughts down on paper. Once you get some thoughts and like a template down at least, then start looking at other personal statements, templates, exchange ideas with your co-medical students as well. And spell check, get a lot of people to read it. That's going to help you with your grammar and everything. And you guys will do great.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agrawal, for your time and advice. If anyone has questions, please leave them in the comments below. I hope this video will help you to write a good personal statement for your residency application. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Malke Asaad. Thank you everyone for watching, and see you in future videos.